Are you looking for a heartfelt gift that's easy to create and great for snuggling? In today's video, I'm showing you how to make a beautiful rag quilt using homespun fabric. This fabric came from one of my most favorite sewing stores. It's a little country store and it's called Brubaker's, and it's in Withee, Wisconsin. We took a little drive one day, my husband and I, to go and find some homespun. I know that you can get it at Hobby Lobby or some of the other stores, but this is a special gift for someone, so I didn't want to do that. No scrap fabrics are going to be used for this special gift. Let's get started. Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Jackie Lose, and I love creating with scrap fabric and sharing unique DIY ideas with a Christian touch. Today I'm excited to share a special project. It's a rag quilt I'm making as a gift for a dear friend of mine. I'm going to walk you through the steps that I take. I kind of do things a little different in my rag quilts, but I will show you every step that I take. And we're going to add a beautiful Bible verse to this quilt. I printed this on fabric. I'm going to cut around and do an applique on one of the blocks, and I'll show you how I do that as well. Let's get started. Let's talk about the supplies you'll need for this project. I'm using homespun fabric. I cut my homespun fabric into 8-inch squares. You'll need some batting. I cut my batting to 6-inch squares. That is what will go in between two pieces of homespun fabric. And then you'll need some snipping scissors. If you don't have those, you can use regular. You'll need a small rotary cutter and a ruler, and I'll show you why here in a moment. A cutting mat, some pins. I kind of made a pattern in Word, and my quilt is going to be 6 blocks across by 9 blocks down, and where I have the BV, that's where my Bible verse will be, and the B is going to be, the B is for a blank piece, if you will. It's the light colored homespun, and I'm going to use that sporadically throughout on the back. So that's what the B means. It's just a simple little plan to help keep me straight in the process as I build my rag quilt. I knew that I wanted this to be a lap quilt, and that's why I went with the 6 across by 9 down. I originally wanted to do 10 down, but then it would have been way longer than it was wide, and that's how I came up with that plan. Next, I want to show you how I build my sandwiches. I'll take one piece of homespun. I made a little template that is 8-inch square, and then in the inside it's 6 inches. And I'll lay that on my 8-inch quilt block. I'll lay my batting in there, and then I know that my batting is centered, and then I lay my top piece down. I'll pin it, and I can pull that template out, but I know that my batting is centered on the inside. So you can do that for any size block that you have, just to make sure for the rag quilt that that batting is centered. Now you will notice that my rag quilt blocks look a little different than you would see typically. I snip out the corners up until the batting. So I'm snipping out all 4 corners of the rag quilt block. And what I have found is that reduces bulk, and it also eliminates the need for me to snip around those weird corners that you've sewn when you sew all the way across. That's how I made my first rag quilt, and I didn't really care for that technique. You can do it one of two ways. You can use a small rotary cutter and just snip that out, or cut that out, I mean, and it goes really fast. I know this is an extra step, but it really doesn't take that long, and I think it helps the sewing process go a lot faster. It goes really fast with the small rotary cutter. So you could do it that way, or if you're really fast with the snipping scissors, you could snip out the corners. Just feel where that batting is and snip, and just do all four corners that way. And this is just how I do it. By all means, if the traditional way is easier for you, yes, do that. I've just always done it this way, but I have to say that this time I did have some challenges with the corners, with having gaps in the corners on my finished quilt, and you'll see that in the process at the end. And I think that was a result of me not getting everything lined up and taking my time. Okay, I am recording this on my phone because I'm in the living room, and here is how I laid it out. You can see I have 6 rows of 10. I just want to make sure that not one pattern is duplicated, but I think it's going to be so pretty. And then here is where the Bible verse will go. And I hope you can see that. And then what will happen is I will start sewing these row by row. And what I will do is come and grab these and sew right on this line. After, of course, I do the X's. And I'll show you that at the sewing machine. But I'll be doing an X from this corner that I cut to this corner that I cut. So I'll have X's from corner to corner, and I will back stitch each one. Then I will take this to the sewing machine and stitch these together, but not right on the edge, not catching the batting. See, there's the batting. So I will sew right along that edge. And that's how that'll go. But I'll show you that at the sewing machine, but I just wanted you to see how I have everything laid out so that I don't mess anything up. It's going to be so pretty. It'll go really fast now. I do need to take this and sew that on the back there, so I don't forget about that. And that's just going to be the applique. All right, let's get to the sewing machine. Hey guys, I just wanted to mention as well that I do mark each row before I take it to the sewing machine to do my X's. That way I know the order. And then as I take the row in, I will sew them together. But I just wanted to mention that. I'm at the sewing machine, and I do want to go ahead and put my applique on before I do anything else with the rag quilt. I do have an applique foot in. It's an open toe foot, and I'm going to be using a blanket stitch. We're going to try it. I'm not always good at that, but on my machine, the Brother SQ9185, it's stitch number 12. I am going to put the stitch length on 3 and do a 4 on the width. But first I need to cut this out. And I'm just going to cut what looks pleasing. Just so I can get a blanket stitch on there. I still have the freezer paper on the back, so that's helping me to cut. And there we go. And center that on, well, first I need to take the paper off, right? And that looks good. We'll go ahead and start at the top. Get all my strings situated here. There we go. I do have a guide on here, and I go by that center red mark. I don't know if you can see that. I'll try to zoom in so that you can see it. Here we go. And just take your time if you're doing the blanket stitch. And basically you want to make sure that the outer stitch is along this line to catch it. And I'm going to lift my foot to get around that curve. Again. And it's looking pretty good. I'm just taking my time to get around those corners. When I have this done, I'll be right back. I have that all sewn on. I really like that. And while I have this block here, I'll go ahead and sew the X on. I will still put an X on even through this, just to quilt it down. I have my walking foot in. Get everything lined back up here. It's going to be a little tight because we did the applique on there. I have this pinned down so that I can make my X. I'm going to start sewing right at this corner and I will backstitch. And I'm just going to go to the other corner where my notch is. And I'm just going to eyeball it. And right to that notch, backstitch. And at this point, if I had another block, I could just continue going. Now I'm ready to do the other part of my X, and I'll start from here. In the notch, backstitch, and continue on. And backstitch at my notch, and we have the 1X done. 59 more to go. And I'm not worried about all this fraying because it'll get taken care of in the wash. But now what I need to do is do all the X's on all my blocks. Once I have all the X's done, and here's what it looks like on the back. Once I have all the X's done on my blocks, I will be back and we can start connecting them. All right, I've got my first row here and I have them marked 1 through 6. And I'm going to start making my X's, and I just wanted to show you that real quick. I do apologize in advance for the gentleman who decided to do his leaf blowing today. But it's okay, we'll get through it. So I'm going to do chain stitching to do the X's, and then we'll connect the first row. So this is number 1. And we're just lining up in our little notch here. I did put a new needle in when I installed the walking foot. When I get to the end and I do my back stitch, I'm going to grab my number 1 again and put it back on there. Number 2. Putting number 2 back. Grabbing number 3. Putting number 3 back. Number 4. Put number 4 back on there. Grab number 5. And I'm not really watching my needle. I'm keeping an eye on my notch. That will get me to the notch. And again, if you're not using the notch method, then you would just sew from corner to corner. That's number 5. Six. And snip this was number 6. And I'll snip, whoops, I'll snip this. We know that this was 5. It lost its tag. So I'll put 6 down, and I will snip, put 5 down, and then we have 4. Something going on with my sewing machine there. This one was 2. And this one is number 1. And I'll snip these threads. And that's how fast it goes. So now I'm going to start with the other side of the X on the other side on 1. And I think I'll pin that on there. And I can chain stitch these as well. Ready for number 2. I'll take 2 and pin that in there. Number 3. Number 4. And number 5. And 6. And row 1 is done for the X's. That's how easy it is. So there's 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and there is 1. And we'll snip off this. And then when I come back, I'll show you how I put them together. Okay, we have all of our X's done. So I'm going to take block number 1, and here is block number 2, and I will put the 2 flaps together. I pin them right away so that I know these 2 go together. And then I can just put them down like that. And then I'm going to sew right close to the batting, but not on the batting. And if you do, it is perfectly okay. But that is the goal. So I'm going to sew 1 and 2 together right up close to the batting, and you can kind of feel it. And if you need to, you can make a piece of tape. What we're shooting for is 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. I have my little gauge here, and 5/8 is going to be out kind of like that. I'm just feeling for the batting, and I'm just going right beside that. And I am back stitching. And then right up to this next notch, back stitch, then I'm going to grab, here's 3 and 4, lay them side by side, grab the edges, pin, and just make sure everything is lined up. If it's not, you can grab it and line it up. Put it on the edge, and then I'm going to turn this one. Bring this one in. Again, I'm feeling for the batting. And sew. Back stitch. 5 and 6. This is a little crooked, which is fine because we can straighten that up. And then these two will come together and pin. Make sure everything is lined up. Turn this. Bring this up, feel for the edge of the batting, and we'll sew those two together. And back stitch. And snip. Remove the pins. And here is 1 and 2. This is 3 and 4. So I want to connect 2 and 3 together. Just like that. Pin if you'd like. Sew those together. Back stitch. This is 5 and 6, so we're gonna put 4 and 5 together. Pin if you'd like. Line up. Feel for the batting. Back stitch. Grab that pin so I don't break a needle. So you can take your stickies off. And here we have one row. And here is where we'll do our snipping. This is row 1, so row 2 will attach to this. And that is how easy it is with this method. But you can see you don't have any bulky corners. So I'm going to continue working on the other 9 rows. When I get those done, then I will show you how I'm going to connect the rows together. I have all of my rows sewn together. I want to show you how I begin combining the rows. You can see my tabs here. And this is row 2. And I'm simply going to pinch, if you will, each of the tabs. Hopefully you can see that. And line them up the best you can, because I can't cut straight. They won't be perfect. And I'll pick it up like that. And I will pin it. I'm feeling to make sure that the batting matches on the inside. So I'll just put some pins in here as such. I'm just going to go with 3 pins. And I'll do that for all of my tabs. I'll come to the next one. I'm just grabbing some pins. And those tabs will pretty much just pop up so that you can pin them. And then if you need to, when you get to the sewing machine, you can realign as necessary. You just want to make sure you have all tabs on one side, and then on the other side, it is not tabbed. And I'll show you that in a moment. Here's what the other side, oops, I missed something there. That's why we need to flip it over and take a peek. Get all the pieces of the tab in there. And then on the other side, it will look like that. No tabs. I'm going to take it to the sewing machine. I will pick it up like this. And I am going to sew all the way across. Feeling where that batting is. Try not to catch my tabs, but I want to catch those corners. So I'll just bring that back and I'll sew right by that. I'm going to be using a walking foot. Let's get this row sewed together and I'll come back and show you. I'm back from the sewing machine, and row 1 and row 2 are combined. This is what the back looks like. And here are all of the flaps. And then all I need to do is combine the rest of the rows and snip, snip, snip. Once I get everything combined, I will come back and show you. Looks like a hot mess right now. But once we get everything snipped and washed, it's going to be beautiful. I have all the rows sewn together, and there's the Bible verse. And I think this turned out really nice. Here is the back. Still looking a little scraggly. And The next step, I have to go around the whole edge and sew all the way around. Just a straight stitch. You could do a zigzag if you wanted, but all the way around. Then I can start snipping. And then as far as the snipping goes, anywhere on the flap, and then you're going to go a 1/2 inch in between. I'll go ahead and do those 2 steps, and then I'll be back. I just wanted to share something before I started snipping. As I was going through, I noticed that in the corners, even though I did a back stitch on each side, I noticed that they're kind of loose, if you can see that. And I wanted to offer a solution for that. I don't remember this happening in the previous times I did it. It could be because I didn't cut straight, but see how these are apart? I hope that makes sense. But I want to offer a solution. What I'm going to do, this is a sample. And let's say it's like this. Here's the tab. The bloom where it's going to fray. I'm just going to take my quilt to the sewing machine and do a joining stitch. On my Brother SQ9185, it's stitch number 16. And I'm just going to go down the center of the bloom. And then on the other side, it'll actually give it a nice stitch on the back. It's basically a patchwork stitch. It's a zigzag in the center and then 2 lines on the side. And I think with homespun, it'll be really pretty. And I'm going to do that for all of the rows. So for example, each row, I will simply open and stitch down the center all the way through, 2 on this side and 2 on this side, and I'll simply put this back on these and just sew and actually join those areas that might have a little spot. Not all of them are like that, but I would just feel better that it's a little more secure. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll get to snipping. The quilt is finally finished. This is after 1 wash. We're getting some nice fraying here. Here is the Bible verse, and it's just so pretty. I think she's really going to love it. This will make a nice lap quilt. I love the homespun. And you can see where I stitched along all the seams. And I do have some spots where there are the same squares, but it's fine. And I did end up tying it off with some yarn. I thought that added a special touch for the homespun. But I really love how this turned out. While working with the homespun fabric, I faced a few challenges. There were some seams that needed reinforcement, and I added yarn ties to keep everything secure. And I think that was because I didn't take my time to make sure that my tabs were perfectly lined up before sewing, because you are sewing through several layers when you're putting those rows together. But with a little extra perseverance, the quilt turned out beautifully, and my friend absolutely loved it. Remember, even when things don't go as planned, keep going. Often, the most meaningful projects are the ones that require a bit of resilience and creativity along the way. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I know it was a longer video, but I appreciate each and every one of you. And until the next video, God bless.